And welcome back to Subculture After Dark. Well, we've got something very special lined up for you right now. Fifth Angel are just about to release their brand new album, When Angels Kill, and we thought we want to get to know a little bit more about this album, so we thought we would actually get one of the members of the band, Ken, on the phone right now to talk about this amazing new album. Welcome to the program, mate.
Thank you so much, Dave.
Now, mate, this is an absolutely amazing album and has actually blown me away when I've been listening to it over the last couple of days. Tell us a little bit about this album and what it means to you, because it is just totally amazing.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, thank you very much for the kind words. And, as an artist, there's nothing you like to hear more than that. That's like the highest compliment anybody can ever pay you. And when you work as hard as we did on this record, we spent basically 2 years putting this album together. And it's a concept record. I can tell your listeners a little bit about that. What we tried to do is we noticed that over the last 3 albums, which have spanned, I think at this point, like 36 years or 37 years, we noticed that a lot of the themes were kind of similar. And so we noticed that we could actually make a story about all the previous songs and previous subject matter. So what we did is we made a story and a concept record, which was really based on a lot of the lyrical content and stories from the previous albums. And to my knowledge, I don't think anybody's done that before. Like, we reference song titles and some lyrics occasionally that actually harken back to those earlier records. And so if you want to know a little bit more about the story that's actually happening in the concept record, you can actually go back and listen to some of the earlier songs to get even more of a background on what's actually happening in the story.
That is such an awesome idea, and it's such an original idea. Tell us a little bit about that story. What was that like, developing the story that became the concept for this album?
Well, it's pretty funny. We had been talking about it a little bit on The Third Secret, which was released in 2018 or 2019. And we just didn't get around to doing that, and we didn't have the time, and we didn't really have, quite honestly, the budget to do what we wanted to do. So we did wait, and on this record, we essentially tried to, once again, put together a story, based on the previous record. So I sort of put together a synopsis of what I felt a cool story would be, and then I have a funny side note to that. When I first sent it to the other guys in the band, my bass player, John Macco, said, do you have another idea? Because he thought the story was way too complex. He thought it was going to be like much too complex to actually come across in an album. And so, we just started making the songs, and once the songs started coming together and everybody could kind of see how it was going to work, the story worked out perfectly. But do you want me to tell you a little bit about the story?
Yeah, that'd be amazing if you could, yes.
Sure. Well, there's 4 main characters in the story. This takes place in a dystopia, I'm trying to think the exact term. Basically, it's a future that is now, obviously not going well. And there are 4 main characters. There's a young man named Phoenix who is the protagonist, and you're basically seeing the world through his eyes and what's happening in the world. And he has 2 friends, Lana and Dylan, who becomes his best friend. And they're basically trying to be. There's a world global leader named Dion Profontis, who is very much a tyrant and not above using force to get his views across and to make people do what he wants them to do. And so our protagonist and his friends are part of a growing resistance that started. And obviously, in this case, resistance can be fatal. So the story is really their story of trying to survive, how they get through it, and you're seeing it through Phoenix's eyes. There's a love story that happens in there. I won't say too much about that, but there is a love story. There are some natural disasters that happen. There's some terrorism that's going on. So it's a fairly deep story, but I think it's something that when you listen to the record, you'll understand. You'll recognize what's going on. It's almost like more of a movie soundtrack, perhaps, than an album, if that makes sense.
Definitely, yeah. That leads into my next question. I was going to ask, do you feel from a songwriting point of view, that it puts a little bit of pressure on you when you're working to a concept like this, or does it give you a more creative side?
I think it actually helped, because one of the first songs that was written was When Angels Kill, and another one of the first songs was The End of Everything, which is very much towards the end of the record. So I think it almost helped to have those bookends, because to continue on the story, we kind of knew, okay, this part has to happen, this part has to happen, and you sort of knew what the song should be like just by the subject matter. So I think having a concept record to shoot for actually made the writing an easier process, if that makes sense.
Definitely. And you mentioned about tying in lyrics and songs from your past albums. How did you go about working out which ones you wanted to incorporate into this story? Was that a difficult process?
Not really. I mean, once the synopsis was done, once the story was done, and you knew which songs, were actually being referred to, then it was just a question of, putting a little snippet in the lyrics or something, referencing back to, one of those previous songs, and maybe some of the previous lyrics, maybe a song title. And so it actually, I think it sort of helped the process, and it made things actually easier. But as far as, the songs that were picked, again, just having the storyline sort of settled, then you could kind of go like, okay, this song would be great, this song would be great, this song would be great. And there are actually references. I mean, I like to call them Easter eggs. There's a lot of Easter eggs in this record for, especially for people that are Fifth Angel fans, that were fans of the previous albums. I think they're really going to love the fact that, there's so many things that harken back to those records in this album.
You mentioned that the album actually feels like a movie soundtrack. Is that something that you would ever be tempted to do, to turn the story into a film, whether it be animated or feature or even a graphic novel? Is that something that you guys talked about?
Yeah, we would love to do that, actually. And the interesting thing is, with AI, I think within probably maybe 3 to 5 years, I think it's probably going to be possible to make an extremely high quality movie at a very limited budget. So we would definitely love to do that in the future. We're already using AI in some of the art. We did a video to Resist the Tyrant, and one of my good friends, Kane Roberts, who's a graphic artist and also was the guitar player for Alice Cooper when I toured with Alice Cooper, actually designed some of the 4 main characters. So if you watch the Resist the Tyrant video, you will see the introduction of Phoenix, of Lana, of Dylan, and of the Tyrant. So anyway, I thought it was funny that we're already using AI in terms of a graphics application, and I think probably shortly we'll be able to make that movie.
Definitely. What was that like for you, watching those characters come to life visually?
It was really, honestly, it's incredible, because he would send something over, and for instance, the Tyrant, a guy named Dion Perfontes, he sent over the image, and it was the guy. Like, you knew immediately. You go, okay, that's absolutely it. And so it was really great to see it come together from a graphics perspective. And I suspect that if, when we are able to actually make a movie out of it, it'll be that much more gratifying.
Definitely. Now, for you guys, the third Secret came out in 2018, and then you guys started to tour and do festivals, and then the world went into a pandemic. What did that mean for you guys during that time? Like, how did you spend that time, especially when that was the time when the band was just starting to pick up traction and getting out there again?
Yes, it was a very unfortunate series of events. And it did make everything more difficult. We didn't know, back then, I mean, you have to remember, the world was really thrown into, complete chaos, and we weren't sure if the record company was going to still be there, or, what was going to happen. Obviously, all touring stopped. So, we took the opportunity to obviously continue writing, and that's what we did. We just kept writing. We were writing via Zoom. We really weren't seeing each other in a room, like you would think of during a writing process. But what's interesting is it didn't seem to bother us. We would we would do a lot of sessions over Zoom and do a lot of the writing, and it ended up working out just fine. So, yeah, it was definitely a chaotic time, and I think it definitely made the process of doing the record much longer than maybe it had to be, just because we were unsure of what was going to be taking place after we finished the record. But everything worked out, and yeah, it's here later than we would have anticipated, but it's here. So I guess that's the good news.
Yeah, that time was really interesting. I found that some creative people found it to be a great opportunity to sit down and work on their art without having the pressures of everyday life. But then other people, it felt like, just lost their creativity during that time. It sounds like you guys didn't find that it was a difficult time to work, though, that you did have the creativity flowing during that period?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we definitely fall into the category of it sort of inspired us. Things were more difficult. Like when we started recording vocals in my studio, Steve Carlson would go into the tracking room and I would go into the control room, and we would see each other through the glass, but we would never be in the same room just because of all the COVID restrictions and everything. And it did make for a sort of surreal kind of atmosphere to work in. So I think in one sense, it actually helped. This is a very dark album for those people that don't really know that. It's a pretty deep and dark story, and it starts out with descent into darkness, and that's not, that kind of sets the tone for the whole record. And honestly, COVID sort of like lent some support to the vibe and feel of this record.
Definitely. Now, Ken, with the album coming out this week, what have you guys got planned now for the rest of this year and going into next year? Will you be touring, or what are the plans there?
Yeah, we're trying to set up some things in the fall. It has been difficult, and actually when you talk about COVID and some of the things that happened, and I think some of the things that we're still not recovered from, part of it has to do with the entertainment industry. It's very difficult for American bands now to tour in Europe because of the inflation. I mean, inflation has really changed things dramatically, and you're seeing it with bands that are well-known, brand names like Anthrax, having to cancel. And you just saw a recent article with Dave Mustaine from Megadeth saying, hey, look, every day we're taking off on tour is, $45,000 in expenses for us just to be sitting there. And, so it is getting more difficult because the costs of touring have escalated. But we are going to try to put together a fall tour for Europe.
Is there any chance that we might see you guys in Australia at some stage? Because I know that the inflation here is through the roof as well, but is there a chance that we might see you guys in Australia one day?
Absolutely. If the demand is there and we can make it work financially, I mean, we would love to come to Australia. Australia is a beautiful, beautiful country, and we would be happy to, especially if it's around summertime's what, December for you guys?
Yeah, December through to March, yep.
Yeah, so, anywhere in that time period would really be awesome because you guys have some of the best beaches in the world.
Awesome, yeah, definitely. And we're one of those countries where just about every capital city has beaches as well, which is absolutely fantastic. But, mate, we are going to play When Angels Kill and Resist the Tyrant back-to-back on our show right now. So what would you like to say to all of your fans out there before they take a listen to these amazing tracks, but also before they go out and grab the album as well?
I'd just like to say thank you for all your support over the years. Without the fans, this wouldn't be happening, and we really do appreciate you. We'll never take you for granted. We always appreciate people when they have taken their time and in cases, some cases, money to support our art. It's an honor for us, and we really do appreciate you.
Well, Ken, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us today. It's been an absolute honor having you on the show, and for all of the listeners, here is When Angels Kill and Resist the Tyrant.